Okay, so this is Anomalies, generative art game, and today I'm going to go through how you can use it to make procedurally generated music. So you want to make sure you've got harmonious sounds only checked, unless you want to make music with, what are they called, microtones, which don't really sound like normal music. They sound a little bit weird, and it can do that, and it's kind of neat, but very experimental. So I'm gonna stick with the regular sounds. Now, in order to get music playing, the first thing I'm gonna do, you can kind of hear it if I move closer. This thing is making some sounds. There's not too many segments. Each segment will make like a note. So when there's very few segments, you're not going to hear a lot of notes. But what I like to do, in order to make songs, I hit Randomize. And you can hear them playing. A little more lively than the last song, but it's still kind of slow, right? The game can produce any kind of sounds. Like, it's hard to explain. Some of them sound good, some of them sound really boring. And that's just part of the procedural nature of the thing. This is kind of a somber tone that we're hearing. So, and there's a lot of factors which I'm going to go over for you to describe exactly what does what when it comes to the music. All of the parameters here are describing visuals, right? So how these segments, how many of them there are going to be, how many spawn points there's going to be, how wide or tall they will grow before shrinking down, that's the maximum size, whether they're moving or not, wiggle, how fast they're moving, orbit, whether they're going to orbit around each other. Anyway, however, all of these parameters also, or most of them, also affect how the sounds work. And the first and most important one, other than harmonious sounds only, that's going to be set here in the options. Hit escape to get to the options, right? Main menu to go back. And this parameter, whatever this is called, this menu here, you can turn it on and off by hitting spacebar, right? It describes what you do here. When you hit the space, now you can move the camera around. When the menu is there, you can move the mouse around. Once you're moving the camera around, you can also use standard, WASD movement, which is normal for like a first-person game. And hitting shift will speed you up a bit. So I can move around this anomaly, look at it, listen to it, right? Okay, back to what I was describing. The most important feature or parameter when it comes to music is this one right here, fixed angle. The sounds, when you have fixed angle off, they're played randomly. So you'll never hear sort of patterns repeating themselves. But when you have fixed angle on, it will play and it will sort of memorize the order and sequence in which sounds are played. And it will continue to play them in that sequence and order. So you'll have like a repeating, song. And that's really what makes things a little more interesting music-wise. It's also interesting to hear the random ones sometimes, but, not quite so much to me. Sometimes they're neat, but sometimes they're not. So what I'll do, I'll just hit Randomize until I hear something I like. It's kind of a slow song. I want to hear something a little livelier. I'm going to keep hitting Randomize until I hear something I like. And now, here we go. Interesting, but kind of sparse. Let's listen. So I kind of like this. It's a little slower than I would like, but there's things we can do about that now. So, first of all, max segments is going to be a major factor in like how many notes you're hearing, right? 170 is a lot, but it's not even close to the max. So I'm going to drag that up to like 450 and see what happens. Now notice I'm hitting respawn. Still pretty slow. Now you're hearing a bunch of notes play all at the same time, right? There's like 3 notes hitting each time. That actually have to do with flowers. I've turned flowers off. Now you can hear there's just 1 note hitting each time. You don't have those harmonies. That is to do with flowers. So now you know what flowers does to the sound. It's still a little slow. So one of the things that affects how often notes play, angle range has an effect on the speed at which notes play, as does branch distance, as does number of branches. You see, this is interesting. As it progresses, it's getting a little more interesting. I'm kind of glad I didn't change this one because I like this now. It started off slow, and now it's getting a little more hectic, and then it's slowing down again. I'm increasing the number of branches to 3. I'm changing too many things all at once, so I'll keep straight branches on. And then also the angle range. Angle range is hard to tell if wiggle is on. Let's just see what happens. Okay. Oh, I increased the branch distance, which didn't help. So let me bring that down to 5. Now we should see some branching happening. Yeah. So you can see like there's multiple branches coming out at the ends here. What's happening? Why don't we see more of those? There's too many spawns. There's 26 starting points for these. So I'm going to bring that down to like 10. When that happens, maximum segments will allow, these things to get longer because there's less starting points. See, they're getting a little bit longer. And you can hear the music is a little livelier. So it's not really designed as a tool for writing music at all. But if you understand how it works, you can come up with some interesting things. And, you know, I didn't even, when I started this program, music was not even on my list of what to do with it. That totally came later. And it was just like this random sort of experiment. I wanted to see if I could do it, and it worked, and it started to do things that I thought were interesting, so I kept working at it, and then I included all these different aspects of, you know, how the parameters add to or take away from the music. And you'll notice it doesn't really follow normal, you know, human rhythms and chord progressions or anything like that. It's more randomized, but it also, with fixed angle, it will create a sort of sequence, and you can hear it starting over again. So I'm going to turn off straight branches and see what that does to it. Now you can see each segment is sort of wiggling. And it got a bit crazy. Okay, I like this. I'm going to add something else called Nebulas. So when I add Nebulas have a different sound than segments. These boxes are the segments, and when I give it a chance to have nebulas, each segment will have a random chance to, instead of being a segment, it will turn into a nebula, which is basically just like a two-dimensional sprite that looks like a little foggy sort of globular thing. I'll show you right now. So now there's segments and nebulas, and you can hear now the nebulas have a different sound. They have that slower ambient sound, which gives it sort of an orchestral effect. Okay. Now another major part of the music, segment type. So this is segment type 6, and there are these boxes. If I go down to 5 and hit respawn, oh, the stretch is a little hard to tell. Those boxes were supposed to be rectangles, but since stretch was down to 50%, they look more like squares. You can hear the boxes now. They have a little different sound. I'm hearing the nebulas. There they are. So that's another sound you can get. Try number 8. Now these are longer branches that have like a bendy shape to them, and they have sort of bendy sound to them too. I hope this is helping if anyone has tried to get music out of this game and didn't seem to know what to do. I'm hoping that this helps you understand the basic principles. I'll go over a couple more before I call it a day. Segment texture. This will visually, only make the segments look different. They'll be the same shapes, but the texture on them will be different. But it will also, from the music side, it will change what we call the scale. So let's go over to number 6, and there's only 6 different scales. It's hard to explain what that does, but you can hear it. The notes are different. So this uses more minor notes. And another major thing is symmetry. What symmetry will do is, depending on what it's set to, 1, 2, or 3, or 0. Right now it's at 0, so there's no symmetry. If I hit it at 1, it will mirror the anomaly on one plane. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. See, it's like the left and right are mirror images. If I do it twice, then you'll have an up-down mirroring happening as well. Like that. Musically, what will happen is if you have fixed angle on, so it's like repeating a sequence, what will happen with symmetry is you'll have more than one sequence, up to, I think, 4 different sequences. So if symmetry is set to 0, there will be one sequence that repeats. If I have symmetry to 1, it's a little confusing. It should be 2 or something. If there's 2 different sides, you'll have 2 different melodies that switch back and forth. So they're both repeated, but it'll switch once and then to the other one, etc. And they'll each play a certain number of times as well. And I forgot exactly what will determine how many times a sequence plays. I'll have to look that up. That I forgot. And as I said, symmetry at 3 will actually create 4 different sequences. And so those songs get a little more complex. The more sequences you have, the less sort of dense they are. You'll hear less notes being played, which is something I'd like to fix, but it's just built into the way I programmed it. Some segments won't play in the first sequence, it sort of saves them for the second sequence, and so on and so forth. So there's less notes to be played in each sequence. You can address that by increasing the number of segments. Now be careful here. 1,000 segments is a lot, and it will really mess up your frame rate if your computer can't handle it, and that's why I have that max segments thing here. Each computer is different. Some people can handle lots, so you can jack it all the way up to 1,000. I'm pretty comfortable around 300. Sometimes I go more. If I have wiggle turned off, I can go much higher safely. So that's something to consider. There are other things that affect the sound and the rhythm. They're a little bit more obscure. I know twist and spiral have some sort of effect. If you hit these up or down, you know, high or low, that will increase the number of sounds you'll hear. So I'm going to bring branch distance down further. And one thing I've noticed is, you know, if these numbers sort of correspond to each other, if they're divisible, somehow that seems to work better. I really don't know why that is. So 400 is divisible by 10, you know. 4, I'm going to go 4 branches. Angle range is 20, I could put it at 40. But I wouldn't want to put it like 34, that wouldn't make that. It might be just psychological, I don't know. I don't know why it works, or if it even works, or if it's just something I think might work, but having these numbers sort of be divisible by each other seems to make things, on the music side, work better. See? I'm gonna move closer to this thing. I like this. This is nice, very soothing. So that's basically it. That's how you can play with anomalies to make music. And if any of this made sense and you get anything out of it, awesome. If not, I apologize. I don't know what I was thinking when I made this thing. It was sort of an experimental game where I was trying to actually make nebulas, you know, for my space exploration game. And I started getting into these. I used these sort of little, originally they were just circles, you know, just to get the shapes of the nebulas to become interesting. And as I saw what was happening, I really liked it, and it started to remind me of the growth of plants and stuff, and I called it space trees, and I added different kinds of segments, and each time I added something new, I got more ideas, and I would see if I could implement that idea. And so this thing branched off of my other game, Star Explorers, and just became a thing of its own. So I hope you enjoy it.